So I've got the New Japan t-shirt on that I got at the Copper Box because I wanted to talk about something that happened this morning with New Japan, and I don't have any friends that are into wrestling. Don't know anyone who would even know that Japanese wrestling is a thing. So basically New Japan gave the announcement that they're going to be having a champion versus champion match on the second day of Wrestle Kingdom this year. Most people I know wouldn't even know what that sentence means, but I feel like I want to critique that, and hopefully this will find its way to some actual New Japan fans and I can have some sort of dialogue about it, because otherwise I'm just going to go insane thinking about it by myself. So this is probably a bad place to start with a critique of New Japan, because I don't think this is a crazy thing to say, but there'll be people who will dispute this because there are a lot of Puritans out there. But I am of the opinion that a lot of New Japan's recent success has come from a huge influx of Western fans who have been disgruntled with the WWE. So starting this critique with a comparison to WWE is probably making people just think like, this is completely wrong, this is blasphemous. But I think it's worth saying, because a lot of people got turned off by WWE, but they didn't really get into why they went from that, which is, you know, if you're an English speaker, WWE gives you everything you should want from pro wrestling. So why did all of these people all of a sudden go all the way across the world to take in a product that they don't speak the language, you're not supposed to know what's going on, and yet so many of us not just got into it, but it became our favorite thing in wrestling. So the thing is, and this is like the hill that I will die on, I hold this opinion in a stronger fashion than any other opinion I have about wrestling, which is that sensory side of a pro wrestling product, you know, how it looks, the style. People love talking about the style, how it looks, you know, how the matches are, what moves they do, what the characters look like, what they wear, their gimmicks. I'm of the opinion that all of that is secondary to the structural side of a pro wrestling product, which is in a lot of ways the same as a lot of other TV shows. Like, there will be some people who liked Game of Thrones because there's big fight scenes and battle scenes and there's dragons and all that kind of stuff, there's zombies. Then there'll be other people who really like Game of Thrones because of all the dynamics with like the different houses and the different parts of the map, the family histories, the rivalries, the history in terms of like the kings and queens, and all of that is structural. It's built into the narrative product. And I think people know this, but they just don't talk about it in the terms that I'm talking about it. But all pro wrestling has structural elements built into it. And if those structural elements fall apart or aren't seen as important, then people get turned off. And I think when people started to realize this with WWE was around like 2012, 2013, where, you know, structurally, the one thing that WWE has always had is their calendar. That is a hugely important structural element that they have at their disposal. Not all the time, because some, you know, the second half of their year can be total dog shit and it just doesn't matter. But they'll always have, and have always had, January to April, the road to WrestleMania, starting with the Royal Rumble, ending with WrestleMania. People know and understand and enjoy the significance of that part of their product. It is inherently important because they've built it that way. And I think when they really ran into trouble with that was everyone was really into CM Punk, and you could see his career trajectory going up and down and up and down, but overall it was going up and up and up, and people could see the culmination of all this was built into the structure of WWE. It was going to be, somehow he ends up in the main event of WrestleMania. That was meant to be the end of that story. And instead they went with The Rock versus John Cena just for the second year in a row. And people started to realize that it was really bad a year later, whenever they used those really important structural elements of their product to hype up Batista coming back versus Randy Orton. That wasn't for the fans who had been watching the whole year round. That was for the people that they were trying to get in the door at WrestleMania. And ever since then, I mean, think about it, we've had so many part-timers come back for like WrestleMania spots. Then the people that you're watching the year round get bumped down the card somewhere or off the card entirely. And so that was a structural element that WWE had that they floundered. They didn't use it the the way it was meant to be used. And now the WWE calendar means a lot less than what it used to. You can't rely on this big crescendo towards Royal Rumble into WrestleMania. You can't really rely on that as like the season finale that it's meant to be. And I'm not saying that this is the catalyst, but it's not wholly unrelated. Hell of a lot of people started getting into New Japan just around that time. And yes, New Japan looks different. Yes, their matches are different, but that can't explain why so many English-speaking fans not only turned up to New Japan, but stuck around. That is to do with the structural components that New Japan have. Their calendar is really important. It's laden with these tournaments that have varying degrees of importance that we all understand now. They have factions to divide up their roster. The factions themselves have like the main, the captain, the team leader. Then they've got, their mid-level guys. They've got their tag team. They've got their juniors. It's all nicely structured so that, and this is another key difference between WWE and New Japan. New Japan is really well structured so that they can, when they add a bit of chaos to the order of things, it means something and we're all excited about it. And the thing is that in terms of order and chaos, one of the most reliable things that New Japan has, like WWE, is their calendar, but specifically Wrestle Kingdom. They have done that well to make Wrestle Kingdom like the jewel of the New Japan year, the New Japan structure, the New Japan product. Now, the reason I feel like I even need to criticize New Japan is because they're doing this 2-day Wrestle Kingdom event this year, and they've just confirmed that they're going to be doing a kind of a mini tournament with the heavyweight championship match between Okada and Ibushi. They're going to be doing the Intercontinental Championship match between Naito and Jay White. And then the winners are going to face each other on the second day. I'm saying that this is a real departure from what they normally do, and I really, really don't think it's a necessary one. Because Wrestle Kingdom is a home run every year. If you're going to mess around with anything in your product, that seems to be the one thing you just don't need to touch. Now, if New Japan are worried about like shaking things up and wanting to do something different, maybe they're thinking they need to keep up with the market that's getting more saturated. Maybe they think they've had a pretty run-of-the-mill year, but that is so far from the truth. Because if you think about New Japan in terms of order and chaos, they've done plenty of things this year that have disrupted the normal order of things with them. Like if you go back to the start of the year, Tanahashi won in the main event of Wrestle Kingdom. Then Jay White won the belt like a month later. Then Okada won it like a couple of months later. So they were having these quick turnarounds in heavyweight champions. That's a departure from what they normally do. That's a bit of chaos. That's a bit of spice to keep things interesting. Takagi, who everyone including me thought was just gonna tear through Best of the Super Juniors, got to the very end and then lost to Ospreay. That was a huge departure from what I thought was going to happen. That was exciting. That was different. I was really, really invested in that. And then the G1 happened, which before it had even happened, they had Dominion where they had announcements for the G1. Like, so Shingo decided that he was going to be in the G1. Like, if that had happened, if that had been the only thing that had happened, that still would have been exciting. And that was the least exciting announcement that was made, because it was followed by Ospreay as junior heavyweight champion being in it, then by Moxley being in it, and then Kenta being part of New Japan and being in the G1. How much more excitement and like chaos and craziness does New Japan think we need? And the thing is that if you keep doing stuff like that, it molds people's expectations, and all of a sudden, the surprising things become less surprising. Or you're just expecting surprising things at all times, and if you don't get them, then you're not satisfied. New Japan are the like beacon in pro wrestling of you can do the same thing pretty much over and over, and people will love it if you just do it well. So my point is that we've had enough craziness this year that New Japan really don't need to worry about us getting bored. We just need to get what we've had every year, what's been an overwhelming success every year that it's been really on the map, say since Wrestle Kingdom 9 or 10. It's just been banger after banger. And now they're messing with the formula, and I don't know what the numbers are, I don't know what the pressures are behind all of this, but I really don't think it's coming from fans, and I don't think it's coming from fans being bored or upset with the status quo. So just a quick run back. First thing is that I think that structure is hugely important in pro wrestling and sometimes often neglected, but New Japan have done a really, really good job with it. They've done a really good job this year of balancing order with chaos. They've given us all the tournaments that we really enjoy. They've given us the calendar that we enjoy. They've given us some swerves here and there. They've given us some major surprises, and I just don't think there was a overwhelming appetite for something that was this different. So that was my first point. The second point is, if you're going to change anything, don't touch Wrestle Kingdom. Okay, so those are the first 2 points. The third one is linked to the structure being important in New Japan's product, and it's a fairly simple point. Having this tournament kind of undermines a good portion of their calendar, which is the excitement leading up to the G1, and then pretty much everything in the lead up to Wrestle Kingdom, because that's pretty much all about setting that main event, having the Tokyo Dome briefcase holder versus the IWGP champion. So that's the third point. The fourth point is, if you were going to do this, you told us that we were going to have a 2-day Wrestle Kingdom event many months ago. If you had said, right, for Wrestle Kingdom 14, we're going to have this mini tournament where the G1 winner versus the IWGP Heavyweight Champion are going to wrestle, and then the Intercontinental Champion is going to have a challenger, they're going to compete, and then on the next day we're going to have this champion versus champion match. If they'd said that pretty much at any point in the past year, everyone could have got behind it. This could have been the most structurally important thing that New Japan had done all year. And if they knew they were going to be doing this, then I really don't think they should have crammed it into whatever it's been the last couple of months. It could have brought this whole narrative to the entire calendar year, which is already so important structurally. And this brings me on to my next point. It would have given Naito's trajectory way more importance than it has. Now, I know that there are people who would die for Naito to be IWGP Heavyweight Champion, let alone double champion, and they've had some horrific disappointments in the past that they can't get over. But if you're a Naito superfan, is this really how you want it? Wouldn't you much rather that he came through the ranks that are there? They're designed for this, the G1, the briefcase defenses, and then you've earned your main event. I mean, he's definitely going into this with the least reason to be there. And then the other aspect of his reason to be there is because Jay White wants it, and he's just a prick. It's why are we listening to Jay White? So it all feels a little bit, I hate to use the word again, feels a little bit WWE. So yeah, one more recap. Order and chaos is important, and they've done really well this year. They've already given us enough surprises. If you're going to give us another surprise, doesn't need to be Wrestle Kingdom. If you were going to do this, why not make it something that was built into the entire calendar year to this point? If you're a Naito fan, is this the way that you would really want to see it happen? And my very last point, I have never enjoyed or appreciated the significance of champion versus champion. I feel like over the course of that concept's existence, you have so many more examples of the loser losing way more than the winner wins. Like the UFC, after they lost, or sort of lost, Conor McGregor and Ronda Rousey, they were so big that they needed stars to fill those roles in the same way that a pro wrestling company would. And so their ingenious idea is, let's have champion versus champion matches. Let's take the star power of two champions and slam them together into one champion. And what has happened there overwhelmingly has been the double champion isn't that much better off for it, and the other star that you had is just dead. They're just gone. There are other examples, but the only one that's springing to my mind at the minute is Chris Cyborg. Where the hell is she gone? Then you've got this whole idea where the second championship then just doesn't really mean anything. It's like you've got the championship you wanted and then just this other accessory. You're kind of carrying them both around. I just think it causes a mess that is, if you can avoid it, then just avoid it. But instead, New Japan are steamrolling straight into it, I would guess under the pretense that, oh well, this will just make, for however big our previous champions were, our previous main events were, they're now thinking this will be even bigger than all of that. And like, first off, does it need to be bigger than that? Wasn't Wrestle Kingdom already fucking huge? Wasn't the IWGP Heavyweight Championship already the most important championship in wrestling? Hadn't they done so much good work up until this point that they probably didn't really need to mess around with it like they have? So anyway, if this finds its way to any New Japan fans, be nice to hear what you think about this. Of course I'm excited about Wrestle Kingdom, it's not coming through exactly the way that I would want, and maybe I shouldn't be too critical of it, but I don't know, I care about these things, man, and I don't really get to fucking vent on any of it, so yeah, that's the vent over. Anyway.